working here? Are they tourists? It's just an interesting dynamic, the way we live down here. Hey everybody, welcome back to Disappointing Your Demons. My name is Ron and I am a grateful recovering alcoholic. So today I'm going to be making a video. It's probably going to be a little difficult for me to make, and I'm probably going to have to pause it. So I apologize if there's jumps in the video and the recording. I was going to make a video on another topic today, but some things have been happening in life and it got me thinking. And I know I use humor a lot and make little jokes on a lot of these videos because it is some serious and heavy subject matter. So I try to lighten it up a little bit with humor, but I'm going to try to keep my nonsense to a minimum today. Because this is a really, heavy topic, really serious topic, and one that I feel would be, using humor would diminish what I'm trying to convey. But I want to talk about something that I've been looking at. You guys know I watch a lot of YouTube videos from different sobriety channels. And one topic that I haven't seen come up, and I don't know if it's because it's just a really heavy topic and nobody wants to talk about it, or if it's just, there are more pressing matters for other people to talk about. I don't know. But I want to talk about grief. Grief and loss in active alcoholism and in sobriety, and how it affects us as people and how it affects us as alcoholics. I was very fortunate, I guess, that I did not have to deal with too much loss or grief in my first 21 years of my life. Sure, some people that in my family that I wasn't close to at all passed away, like my grandmother's aunt. She was old, holy crap. But she passed away and didn't really affect me all that much because I didn't really ever visit her or anything like that. But anyway, as I have said before, I grew up with my mom and dad, but we lived in my Nana's house. And my Nana basically raised me because my parents were working. My mom was around and dad was always working, and mom was working more than not. And so my grandmother really had a huge hand in raising me, and quite honestly, she was my best friend. I loved her so much. And we had our little, she would always try to protect me from getting in trouble with my dad because she knew what was going to happen, and she couldn't really do anything to stop it other than, we would keep little secrets and everything, and up to and including that one time I had this thing going on, and I moved out of my house and I was gone for like a month, and the thing didn't work out, and I wanted to come home, and my parents were like, "You're not coming home, you're an embarrassment, you brought shame to the family and whatever." And my Nana sat my parents down and literally said to them, "Look, this is my house. That's my grandson. You either let him come home or you two can get out and we'll just live together." And another thing, there goes the car badge. And another thing that my Nana would always say to me was that when it was just her and my mom and dad, it was a house. But when they adopted me, I made the house a home. And that was how my Nana felt about me. My Nana was such a great person, such a loyal person. Her husband, my mom's dad, passed away when my mom was about 12 years old, and my Nana never dated. She never had any desire to date. She always said that, I was married. My husband is Dale. He'll always be my husband. And she just didn't want to. And I think that, so I think that talking about grief and loss, I don't think my Nana ever got over that and ever dealt with the loss of her husband, and I don't think that my mom ever dealt with and or got over the loss of her father. And I know my mom, whenever she would talk about it, which wasn't very often, but whenever she would talk about it, she would just say that her father was her best friend, and pretty much that her world ended when he passed away. And so maybe that had a lot to do with the way my mom treated me or acted towards me growing up. I don't know. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor. I guess I should preface this whole thing. I'm not a grief counselor. I'm not a doctor. I'm not anything. I'm just again, as I said before, a drunk who lives in the Caribbean who knows a thing or two about alcoholism. But I don't think that she ever dealt with that. And my dad, I don't think he ever dealt with the passing of his father. His father passed away before I was born too. But anyways, as pertaining to my life, I was drinking and drugging a lot, and then, from 13 on. When I was 21 and I was legal, it got worse. But one day, and I'm repeating a little bit of stuff that I've talked about in previous videos, but one day my dad found out that he had a bad heart valve and had to go in for heart valve replacement surgery. And there's a lot of loss in this little story, but and a lot of grief. And loss and grief doesn't have to be just somebody passing away. I mean, it could be, loss and grief pertains to a lot of things, like relationships, people passing, friendships that end, a pet dying, all sorts of things. It doesn't just have to be about death, but in this video, and as what my story is mostly having to do with people passing away. And so when my dad went in for his heart surgery, my mom, of course, was a wreck. My Nana was a wreck. I was a wreck. But because everybody in my life, of course, my dad's going in for the surgery, I have to be the man of the family. I have to knuckle up and take care of things. Well, anyway, boy, did I not realize what that meant at the time, but I was about to find out. And my dad went in for his heart surgery, and he almost died. He aspirated while he was under the anesthesia, and then little did we know, but once he came out of I think it was a medically induced coma, because they didn't want him coughing because they had just cracked open his chest. And while all that is happening, and if that's not stressful enough, my Nana, my best friend, she died. And I remember that day. I had gone out drinking the night before, and my mom and dad would always get pissed at me when I would be late for work. So what I would do is I would hop in my car, I'd pretend like I left for work, wait till my mom and dad left for their respective jobs, and then I would drive back and go back to bed. And my Nana, she knew, but she was just She was being my Nana. And that day, she just wrote down, I told her to wake me up at 8:30, and she just wrote down Ron 8:30 on a piece of paper. And I went to work, she got me up, I went to work, all hungover, feeling like an absolute bag of shit. And then I get a phone call in the middle of the day from a family friend, because my mom was at work and she tried to call my Nana on her lunch break, because she always talked to my Nana on her lunch break, and she couldn't get a hold of her, so she sent one of her friends over, and my Nana had just laid down on the couch, and I don't know if it was the stress or maybe it was just her time or whatever, but she laid down, she passed away peacefully. She had her mind up until the day that she died. She had her health, like, but she just, I guess maybe she was just couldn't take it. I don't know, but she died. And now here I am, dealing with my dad's stuff. My mom is an absolute mess and absolutely, like, this sounds bad, but can't think of a better term, absolutely, completely useless to help with anything. Is understandable. Her husband's freaking, we don't know if he's gonna make it. Her mother's just passed away. And here I am, like, not the best freaking son. But I gotta do it. I don't have time at this point. I don't have time to mourn. I don't have time to process everything that's going on. I just kind of go into autopilot, and I'm the one who has to pick out the funeral home. I'm the one who has to pick out the casket. I'm the one who has to pick out, the dress that she has to wear. And then I gotta find time to go in and visit my dad. And at which time, when my dad was in the hospital, and then I have to be there to tell him when he came out of his coma that Nana had passed away. And it was weird because they explained it that because of the stuff that they had to use to put him into that coma, that he was going to be pretty emotionless for a while. And when I told him, he just kind of went, huh. But in the meantime, one of the good things that came out of my dad and all this was that my Uncle Richie, my dad's younger brother, and my Auntie Noreen came back into our lives. Because my family's fucked up. We weren't very close. My dad has two brothers. He's got Uncle Richie, he's got Richie, and he's got Joey. And I don't even want to get me started about Joey. But yeah, that's not Sicilian enough. Richie, Frankie, and Joey could have their own doo-wop group. But anyways, so then the funeral, internment, everything, came and went, and I could not deal with the emotion, so I fell back on the one thing that I knew would make everything go away, and that's alcohol. And I went on like a freaking 3-week bender after everything was all said and done, because I didn't want to feel, I didn't want to deal with the grief, I didn't want to deal with the loss, I didn't want to deal with the emotions. I cried once when my Nana died. And so on the vein, this is going to be a long video, I apologize, but I have to get all this out. So in the vein of what I was saying earlier, that loss doesn't just have to be somebody passing away. I lost my father on that day, too, from that surgery. And he didn't die, but he was never the same. And it was actually in a good way. So, to know my father before his heart surgery, all you have to do is picture Joe Pesci in all those gangster movies, minus all the murdering, and that was my dad. The temper, same height and build, the temper, the whole 9 yards. I'm not even exaggerating, I'm not making stuff up, I'm not trying to do anything other than just paint a picture of how my dad actually was. Like crazy. He cared about his family, loved his family, yes, absolutely, but nuts. I remember one day after work, before I went out to the bar, because this is what I would do after work. I would go to the rehab hospital that he was in, because he was in there for like 2 months, something like that. And the first time that I went in there was one of the first. Anyway, I go in to see him, and now my dad always liked animals and always liked dogs and stuff like that. But anyways, I go in to see him, and he's sitting up in his bed, and he's got this big, goofy smile on his face, and his eyes are wide. And my dad had a funny way of talking, and I think I imitated him pretty well. But come in, and Ronnie, the animal guy was here today. The animal, he had a little bunny. He let me hold the bunny. And he's pretending like he's petting it. He got to pet the bunny, Ronnie. He had all these animals. And I was like, wow. I was like, what? Dad? He goes, Ronnie, oh, it was incredible. Oh, the animal guy. And he was talking about somebody else was getting. He was all excited about that. But it was like something that like a little kid would be excited for. So I lost my dad on that day too. Now, hindsight being 2020, and I again firmly believe in God. I believe that it was His plan that this had to happen, because my dad on that day became one of the most gentlest, loving, wonderful human beings you would ever meet in your entire life. No more screaming at Ma and me. No more trying to, doing whatever. Like, just no more flying off the handle. He turned into this loving, caring man. Somebody that is set a good example of what a man should be. And the reason that I say that it was all part of God's plan is because when I got the old heave-ho from my ex-wife, and I kept going out, I had my problems that I have with drinking. He stepped up. So we had all bought a house together in Attleboro, and he lived downstairs from us. He and my mother lived downstairs from us, and like an in-law, and so he was living there, and he raised my girls. I was there somewhat, and they absolutely loved him. And that's another thing, talking about mourning, and like, it just all made my drinking worse, because I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to feel any of it. So I numbed everything. And honestly, up until recently starting to get into therapy and stuff, I never dealt with it. And, then mourning the loss of my marriage. I put on this hard-ass exterior. I mean, fucking, I'm single now, blah, blah, blah. I didn't want to be married anyways, but still, you know what? Freaking, it's a loss. And I beat myself up over that too, because I know why my marriage dissolved. I mean, we didn't have the best relationship, the greatest relationship. We were pretty toxic for each other, especially towards the end. And I remember one of my kids saying, well, I'm not going to name names in case they watch this. I don't want them to feel bad or anything. But said to me and my ex-wife while we were in the middle of an argument, it was literally like, would you two just get a divorce? Like, we can't take the fighting and the yelling anymore. Would you two just get a divorce? That really sucks when your freaking own kid has to say that to you because of the bullshit. But anyway, so yeah, I drank it all away. Drank it all away. And I have a saying, and I think it's true when it comes to people passing away, is that you never really truly get over it. You just get used to it. You just get used to not having them around. But yeah, and then of course like I said, I got sober, and I started to deal with it a little bit, you know. But like I said, up until recently, I tried counseling before back then, but they were just shitbags, and I didn't really click with any of them. So I just kind of swept it under the rug like a good Italian does. Oh, sorry, Sicilian. My dad would freaking kill me if he heard me say Italian. There is a difference. uh, but yeah, and then in recovery, the losses keep coming. Uh, you know, the older you get, the more it happens. But I mean, just in recovery alone, the people that I've known in AA or from when I was in the sober house, and so many of them have passed. And when you're in AA, you know, you got your sponsor, you got people that you can talk to, and you commiserate, and part of, and it's a shitty thing to feel, but when somebody passes in recovery, you kind of feel like, you know, that could be me. I don't want to say better them than me, but like that could be me. If I don't stay on this path, that could have been me. So you don't really deal with it per se, but you do deal with it. But anyway, so fast forward some years. I'm now living on St. John, and I'm in deepest part of my addiction. And my dad always, you know, parents were never really happy to hear from me, but they, you know, would talk to me, and I would talk to my dad for like 5 minutes, and he would always say something like, you know, so how's the drinking going? And I'd say, yeah, you know, it is what it is. And he'd be like, okay, well. And then it's like maybe 3.5 years that I had been here, and no, sorry, been about a year and a half since I after moving down here, and I decided to try to sober up. But I didn't really do anything other than just start, you know, I went to a couple of AA meetings, whatever. And then, but I did manage to not drink for like 3 or 4 months. And one day my dad calls me, and my dad knew I was sober, or at least wasn't drinking. And my dad calls me, and we actually have a 45-minute conversation. We have a 45-minute conversation, and he's just gushing that he's so happy that I'm not drinking. And then he proceeds to apologize for everything. And I talked about this in another video, but apologize for everything, and he ends the conversation with, I love you. I said, I was sorry too. And I said, I love you to him. And a month later, my daughter, my oldest daughter, had just moved down here, literally moved down here. And the next day, he died. He had congestive heart failure, and that wasn't, you know, obviously that wasn't going good. But he ended up contracting pneumonia. They tried to blame it on COVID, but we got the medical. He got pneumonia, and his heart couldn't take it, and he passed away. And I managed to not drink as much as I wanted to with that loss, because of all the, even though we had had that conversation all, and we apologized to each other, and I forgave my dad that day that he called me. I forgave him for sure. But just because I forgave him doesn't mean that like all those feelings weren't still there. But I managed to stay sober. I managed to not drink long enough that I gave him his eulogy. Like, we did a 2-part eulogy. I did my part about growing up with Frank and Gracia and my ex-wife, because they continued to live upstairs and downstairs from each other. Because my dad was all about family, and he wasn't about to put my grandchildren and ex-wife out on the street. And he knew I wasn't good. They knew I wasn't good to be having around at that time. Anyway, but we did a 2-part eulogy, and I was sober for that. I was sober. I had to make his funeral arrangements with my ex-wife's help. She was in person. I was here on the phone doing it. And I wanted to drink so bad. So bad. But I knew that would be doing a disservice to my dad's memory. I just realized that half of my head was cut off in this video, but I'm not going back and redoing it. You guys just have to deal with it. It's the message, not the picture. It was my dad's I didn't want to taint my dad's memory or anything by starting to drink again because he passed away. So I held on. And I held on, white knuckling it so hard for a month. And I won't get into a whole lot of this, but my mom's got something going on with her brain. And she had a stroke a while ago, and she doesn't remember things. And my mom called me one Friday night. And she just went up one side of me and down the other, saying the most horrible things you could think of for a mother to be saying to her kid, especially what happened after with my dad. So I kind of had to, in this instance, with what's going on with my mom, I already having done more in the loss of my mother. She's not the same person that she used to be. And that happened, so I just said, fuck it. Found the biggest fucking piece of shit on the fucking planet. Worst son ever. Wished he never adopted me. The only reason that I didn't adopt the fucking second child is because I was such a fucking handful and fucking terrible. I said, fuck it. I was gonna fucking get blackout. And I went out, picked up 2 12-packs of beer and a big-ass bottle of rum, and I got wasted. Fucking wasted. And I just kept right on going. And I drank away all those feelings. I drank away the loss. I drank away the grief. I drank away the anger at my mother. So I called her a few days later. That was about a week later. And I said, hey, we need to have a talk. And she was just like, oh. And I was like, yeah, about what happened Friday night. She's like, what are you talking about? And I said, you called me, remember? She goes, I haven't talked to you in over 2 weeks. What are you talking about? And then I was just like, oh. And after that, that's when I found out that my mom had some stuff going on. So what did I do? Drank even more. Because I know what it means. I know what the progression of what she's got going on means. So here's another loss that I have to prepare for, right? Now, I'm sober now. In a few days, God willing, I'll have 4 months under my belt again. This past week has been a particularly difficult week in the world of loss. Saw on Facebook that a kid that I was good friends with in high school suddenly passed away. So that's sad. Now, I hadn't talked to him in years, like on the phone, or seen him in years, pretty much since high school. But we stayed in touch on Facebook. And he was a good friend. He was a really good kid. He passed away, and he leaves behind a wife and kids and everything. And then I get a text from my ex-wife. My Uncle Richie is in hospice. He's not going to make it. While our family wasn't super close. You know, Uncle Richie was there for after 21, after the thing with my dad. My Uncle Richie was there for everything, for all the big stuff. Him and my dad became such close friends. You know, I just remember the cookouts, or the camping trip. You know, and my parents had a camper, and Uncle Richie and his Aunt Noreen had a camper in the same campground. And I remember going up there on the weekends with the girls, and they'd always be busting each other's balls, calling each other McGeegee, whatever the fuck that means. I think it's a play on something Irish, but because you know the Sicilians and the Italians in Boston and the Irish have this little rivalry. And he was a chef, and he would like cook for us, and he would always come out, and if he was cooking for us, he'd always wear a chef's hat and just goofing around. Made the meals for our, you know, mine and my ex-wife's rehearsal dinners and everything. So he was there. And so what that does for me in sobriety now, because I have to feel, it's all part of, I have to feel the grief, I have to feel the loss, I have to feel it, because it's all part of the deal, man. Like, you gotta be human. And honestly, I can honestly say that the news did not make me want to drink. And the reason is, and again, I say I don't advocate for any one particular recovery program, but AA is my thing, so I am going to talk about it. But it's because I have a good program. It's because I have a sponsor that I can lean on when I'm feeling like fucking shit. It's because I know God is in my corner, and He's not going to put anything in my life that I can't handle right now. So I am dealing, and I talked to my therapist about it. And she was proud of me. She said, you're handling this very well. Like, you know, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to do as a recovering alcoholic. You're using your tools, you're talking to people instead of bottling it up and not feeling it. And he hasn't passed away yet, but it's coming. But because of everything that I've worked so hard for, and everything that I've been doing, I don't need to drink over it today. I can be there and talk to my mom about it, talk to my auntie Noreen about it, and it's gonna be really fucking sad when he goes, because, you know, it's my uncle, my family, my dad's brother. We're getting closer and closer to being, well, they have kids and I don't know what, I've never really met my cousins. So I'm not sure what the age difference is, but I'm pretty sure I'm, if I'm not the oldest remaining male member of the family, other than my Uncle Joey. But when he kicks off, you know, I'll be right up there. That means responsibilities for my family too that you don't really think about, but I have to be there for. I have to be present. I have to be sober. There's a saying that nothing's going to happen today that a drink is going to fix. And certainly not. And I've been given the tools through AA and from watching videos about grief and loss. Sorry, 1 second. So, with grief and loss, that sorry, just bear with me 1 second. So, I guess I will start closing out this video because it's already almost at 40 minutes with this. Is that as with guilt, grief is actually a good emotion, a good feeling. Well, not a good feeling, but it's good because it means you fucking cared. It means that you felt something. It means that you're a human being and you make attachments. And that you are capable of caring about something more than yourself. And if there's any consolation in this whole thing, I wish that you guys had known my father and my uncle. And this is, but soon enough they'll be reunited. And heaven better watch out because, man, they're gonna raise some ruckus. Just picture my dad chasing them lady angels around. So I guess that's all I got. You don't have to drink over grief. I'm not going to drink over any of this. And clearly, I'm not at the stage of my life yet where I'm used to not having my dad around. But one thing's for certain. It just goes to show how great of a man he was and how much of an impact he had on people's lives, because people miss him so much. All right, that's all I got. I'm not even going to say the usual YouTube bullshit. Just thank you for watching.